And then let's watch the next, I guess, installment of Ray's deep dives, essentially, into base building. This time it's around the design and economics. If you guys aren't familiar with Ray's guide, let me link the video right now to you, so you guys can check them out. Get subscribed if you end up liking the video. But yeah, Ray has been engaging so much with my content lately. Ray's been really, really cool, and I've been really enjoying these videos from Ray. I don't always agree with everything, but in general, I think him and I are very much aligned with how important these actual base building mechanics are going to be for the game. When you look at sort of the current game and the locations where they design things themselves, how static they are, and how you were just a passerby at these locations, right? Where these are yours. These are what are actually going to ground us into the world that Star Citizen builds. I just find them to be so incredibly important. So I am very interested in what he has to say.
Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. This is the fourth video about the base building system previewed by Todd Pappy at the last CitizenCon, which they will soon begin development on. The first video I set out 6 main areas of concern. The second delved into the first 2, having to do with the form and what we had bought from base building, and the third with 2 items regarding attack and defense. And this will cover the last 2, which I will call...
The attack and defense one was really, really, really good. I really suggest you check that video out. It was a good, it gets your juices flowing about your own thoughts around base building and defense and all that stuff, because it hopefully plays a big factor.
Of economics and tools. This keeps every video digestible size, but it also means that as you go, I realize there were things that I should have explained better for lack of time, and also, well, things that Todd Pappy could have explained better for lack of time. So we start with 2 types of settling, which I'm going to call squatting and homesteading. Squatting is occupying a place that you have no authority to occupy. You find a place, plop down your construction equipment, and build, for example, a turret, a well, a refinery. Homesteading starts with a legal claim to the land and then build or have built for you a settlement on it. Squatting.
Okay, and just in case he doesn't explain that, squatting can only happen in a system like Pyro, the lawless systems, and the other would happen in UEE-based systems. Like the 3 examples were like lawful areas, unlawful or lawless or whatever, and then the last one would just, well, I guess the last one would be lawless. I can't remember what the middle ground was in their PowerPoint. I'm sure we'll see it in his video, but there were 3 stages of, I guess, danger when it comes to, high sec, low sec, and null sec, essentially, if you play Eve. Null sec is where you squat, and high and low sec is where you would actually purchase the land.
Is extremely risky and extremely ephemeral.
And register that
because
land.
You don't have ownership of the land, you don't have ownership of the building to build on them, and therefore no legal right to defend them. If you squat on unclaimed but claimable land, and then somebody else claims it, your buildings are either property of the new owner or most likely auto-bulldozed.
He's making assumptions here. From watching the video, I never made the assumption that what he just mentioned would be possible. So the idea of being able to just build without a land claim, I think when it comes to the UEE systems, so a Stanton system or like a Terra, you would not be able to build without a land claim. Yeah, we just don't have enough info. And he's speaking, for me personally, as if he knows this to be true, is sort of how it sounds. I don't believe we know this to be true unless I completely missed something in the 5 times that I watched the video. Like the base building thing. So I don't think I did. So I think he's making an assumption here. So keep that in mind. I don't think you're going to be able to squat in a system like Stanton without placing down your land claim. And that would register it with the UEE, that would make it your own, and that would make it safe for you to defend. It basically, I think, would create all the laws that we're currently have on our ships and getting in the future, but on the ground. One of the things that he discussed in his last video that we watched was how high would the law system protect you? So like in altitude above your land, and I think we kind of discussed that a little bit. Is it sort of can be treated the same way an outpost would be that has an armistice zone. You fly, 2 kilometers away, that armistice goes away, right?
Something Can't you fight them off? Well, for reasons I'll get to in a moment, probably not. If you build on claimed land while the owner is, for example, logged off and they return, your buildings can be either taken by the landowner or simply auto-bulldozed. Again, with nothing you can do.
I think the game is going to be hard-coded and say you cannot build here. Do we, let's take a little poll in chat. Do you think that it'll be any different than that? For me personally, I'm 99% sure that we will have a system that just says, you don't own this land, you cannot build here, right? In the stand system and in lawful systems. I just don't see it being that way. Any other way than that.
There's also one even more frustrating way to instantly use your squatting buildings, which I will get to in a moment. But first, this slide, which many people took to mean that in full and
here we go. This is the slide I was talking about. High sec, low sec, and no sec.
And middle security systems were to be exclusively homesteading, while the null security systems would be exclusively squatting. Now, I sincerely hope that this is an oversimplification and that there is the availability of homesteading on null security locations because of the extreme ephemerality of squatting. Also,
okay. So now we're getting to the meat of his point of view. He wants the ability to squat in a system. I guess low security would be considered Stanton, is my guess. And no security would be considered Pyro. And high security we still haven't seen yet. He wants to be able to find a spot on Daymar and build something on it, whether it's a resource extractor or a turret. He wants the option to just build, and then all these other edge cases happen. Personally, I think simple is better here. I place my land claim, I can build on it, and then I have the partial protection, I have the taxes and fees, and the medium cost and medium financial return. I personally like the simplicity of it. Where I want it to not be simple is how I build, what the buildings do, how can I upgrade them and make them better and more efficient and make them look cool, and the design and which location I choose so it looks cool, right? That kind of stuff. The looking cool and the making it work for whatever you need it to do, right? Upgrading my crafting tables or whatever. Making my resource extractor work better, that kind of stuff. That's where I want the depth, but it does sound like Ray wants the depth in a different place. And while that's not my preference, I have no issue with it being his.
I expect that there should be squatting possible on the middle and high security systems because we have NPC squatting there already in the form of the derelict outposts.
Fair enough.
There's also the matter of this first principle. Many folks have paid for the ability to do land claims, and that purchase should be respected to the greatest extent feasible. In other words, on all 3 levels of systems. Another thing with this slide is it gives the impression that the important thing about a
No, you paid for a land claim. So all 3 is not feasible because there is no land claim in the last one. But the first 2, claim away. That's what you paid for.
Land claim are taxes and protection. They are not the most important thing. They are not even remotely close to the most important thing. The most important thing is clear title. Is the recording that you, and only you, have ownership rights on the tract. And this is where the gridded system of square tracts makes sense. The title records can be a simple table, versus having to do a mathematical comparison of the extents of nearby tracts to see if there is any overlap. And the location of that data table is the global database. So if you need or want to move from region to region or shard to shard, your base can move through the global entity graph to the entity graph of the destination shard.
Oh, God. That's going to be such a mess.
But without clear title, somebody could be squatting on the exact same spot in another shard, and if you were to try to move your squatting structures with you to that shard, there would be all sorts of unresolvable problems. So here,
there's so much that we still need to learn here, but he is pointing out a really odd situation if this game ever does work the way they said it was. What does he mean with shard? Okay. Well, initially, the expectation would be like there'd be a bunch of US servers, there'd be a bunch of EU servers, let's say, right? And I placed my base at a location on a US server. Should my base show up on your EU server? And if it does, how am I supposed to be able to defend it if you attack it? No? Okay. Well, then what happens if we end up playing this game all in one server? None of us, I don't want to say none of us, but I don't think a lot of us feel that that's what will happen. I do think we're going to be regional. So I think there'll be an NA server, an EU server, Australian server, Asian server, that kind of stuff. And I think that solves a lot of these problems then. How do you defend it? Right? Isn't server motioning supposed to get people on different servers, but with one world? Yeah. 20 years from now. Like, we're at the very beginning of that, and it will look nothing like that initially. So it's going to be an interesting one. And he's just pointing out like this really interesting edge case that's going to cause a lot of problems, I think. So it's just, for me, that issue I just keep in the back of my mind because we're so far away from that situation still.
here's the kicker. Squatting settlements are shard locked. If you have...
Oh, Mike, have you ever played a browser game where you matched up against people from around the world? Yeah, except you're on a server. You're on an individual server. Right?
to or want to log into a different shard.
The issue that I'm talking about is somebody is attacking your base on a server and you don't play on that server, right? So the question is whether or not my base should show up on another server, and how should people be able to interact with them? How does Eve handle it? Eve is one server. Eve is in one. Everybody is playing the same game in the same world. Eve is technically one world, one universe that everybody is playing in, right? Star Citizen is not. Not right now, and it's not going to be ever. Because if there's enough of us in one area, guess what Star Citizen's going to do? Split us up. Or the opposite. Add a bunch of servers to make it work. It's hard to say. I mean, I think we saw the demo, and it looked really good, but we won't know until it happens. So, for me now, we don't know. And I'm not going to spend the mental energy on this specific edge case until we know what it's like when you're in one shard and I'm in one shard, and can we see each other? Like, we saw the demo, but it doesn't matter what they showed at CitizenCon. It matters what's actually in practice with us. They showed that thing at CitizenCon in October. It's January. It's not in the game yet. It's not in any sort of testing for us yet. So it's clearly much further away than, that little demo that they showed. And we all knew that, and that's fine, right? Take your time on it. Let's make sure it's good, and we'll test it when it's ready. I'm not trying to hurry it up or rush it out or anything and make a comment about that. It's just really about we don't know until we know. And, making videos and speculating is super fun, and that's what Ray's doing. It's just my personal preference to not speculate on something like the game is done speculation. Like, the game is not just like 1.0 and out, but like completely done.
Your squatting settlements never existed there. Or rather, they're still existing on the original shard, possibly itself being squatted and looted by others. That's why if you squat on claimable land and it gets claimed, you won't be able to stop the auto bulldoze because it will likely have been claimed on some other shard, and you have no idea which.
Again, he's just saying like auto bulldoze, like none of this stuff exists. We don't know any of the mechanics here.
This is why I said that you can't pay to have the King and Queen buildings, the hangars, automated warehouse, and hospital built on squatting settlements, because they're just too ephemeral to have so much value in them. This also parallels real life. If you're signing a construction contract, a standard provision is that you affirm that you have clear title to the worksite. And if the contractor is on the ball, they will do a title search to confirm it.
Therefore, you should not be allowed to build unless you have the title of the land.
Otherwise, yeah, it can be bulldozed.
But the point that he makes about the pirates and shit, he's got a really, really strong argument there.
This is why I said that if you defeat a homestead, you can't steal the land claim. Because the land claim isn't simply possession of the geotag. It is the entry in the title records in the global database. Now, if you take over a squatted settlement and squat there yourself, sure you can do that, because nothing was stolen, because nothing was ever owned. As to why the automated warehouse could only be disabled and not destroyed or looted, two things. First, if you attack a homestead and lose, does the homesteader get to go to your storage at, say, Grimhex and take everything? No. So it seems like the stakes are entirely asymmetrical, and then nobody would store anything at a homestead, and then you still have nothing to loot. And the only thing lost is having the homestead base be as convenient as having your base elsewhere. So please, don't have things be as binary as this slide suggests, and have claims be available on no security planets and squatting available on the medium and full security planets.
This is the weird one. The full security, I think it's going to be very black and white. This is where you build your home. This is where you make it pretty. This is where you keep all your rare stuff that you don't want anybody to touch, right? This is the one that I don't think any of us understand how it's going to play out. How's PvP going to work? Like, this is the one that needs the most thought, the most time, the most effort, the most discussion with not just internally, but externally with us on their thoughts, their plans, their ideas, how they feel. I mean, I think we need a lot of experimental mode tests with how some of these things are going to work before it's ever implemented into the game properly. I really want to know what they think here, because I think we have a very good idea of what this is going to be like, and I think we have a very good idea about what this is going to be like. But everybody is questioning, and everybody is making up their own imaginary ideas, myself and Ray included, about how this will play. And that's the one that Ray can make all the videos he wants. I can have all the discussions I want about it. But in the end, it's got to come from them. We got to have more discussions about the plans here. And if it's going into development in Q1, as they said, then we need to hear more.
Now, since I've raised the topic of shards, let's look at a particular question. How does your homestead settlement, not squatting, look when you are on a different shard and or when you are logged off? There are three possibilities. First, invisible. The land appears to be claimed but undeveloped. If you log into that shard, it suddenly goes from undeveloped to developed with all your buildings of your base popping in, which might be jarring to someone standing there at the time. This is, however, simple and of minimal impact to all the shards that you are not at, which
I believe they spoke very briefly about the idea that the base would be there, but it would be like invincible instead of invisible. Everything that you did, people would be able to see, but they wouldn't be able to interact with it. But again, same shard, different shard. Like, how will it play? Don't know. But what up, Krantz?
By definition, are the majority of them. Number 2, inactive. The land is claimed and developed, but the buildings are locked down tight and inactive, perhaps able to be superficially damaged, but when the player returns to the shard, they are instantly repaired to the state that they were on whatever shard and time the player logged out. And
so what happens when you combat log? Right? That's the problem with this one.
Stored the base in the global entity graph. Number 3, active. The land and buildings exist, and the automated defenses will respond to anyone in your organization's attack list or who attacked the homestead. Buildings can be disabled, but the warehouse cannot be looted. And why would you set your homestead to be able...
SaltEMike, didn't the devs explain? Yeah, I literally just explained that the devs have already discussed it, but at the same time, don't you think that's a very... it most likely was just a discussion that they were having and something that they were thinking. We've been through that with Star Citizen plenty of times. But the idea of the inactive, I cannot interact with this thing. So let's think about this from a PvP example then. Is if I'm a PvPer and I'm looking for bases to raid, what's the experience going to be like if I'm flying around Daymar and I constantly come across bases that are inactive, that I can't... Oh, they're not online. If I'm not on the shard, do I look like I'm offline? Right? So it's just going to be a bunch of bases I can't interact with all the time? Seems pretty stupid. So if you're going to have low security, they said you can attack, but the UE will defend. It's like, I think everything needs to go into the game in practice and decisions be made properly from there. But CIG just shares PowerPoints and everybody says, well, that's how it has to be. No, CIG needs to start making the gameplay, then deciding how it's going to be. But we don't do that.
To be attacked while you aren't there? Well, let's say you're in an org community, and your org mates in the neighboring tracks are relying on your defensive turrets as part of a shared community defense. Now, I'm willing to suggest to let the players decide which level to use for their base, and even have conditional rules. So, for example, have your base be invisible on regions other than your primary region, inactive on shards in your region that you rarely, if ever, play on, and active on the shard you and your org set in the matchmaker to make your primary shard. Moving on to economics, a quick note about this building. Please, have it be used to extract materials other than the ones that are collected by hard rock mining. Players and developers have invested too...
I think it should be both. I think it could be just... okay. I wonder how much mining Ray has done. I wonder if Ray remembers the initial Prospector concept art. It looked a lot like this. It pointed down into the ground. We were not breaking rocks on the surface and scooping them up into our little bags, right? It was much deeper than that. There was a lot more. Where has mining really failed and still fails today? It has failed at finding a vein of ore, finding a deposit of ore that you mark and you come back to over and over and over again. I know gold is here. I know Quantanium is there. And then I go to those locations. But guess what? Other people are going to know it's there and here and over there. Right? So when you go, they might be there too. And that's what resource extraction in MMOs is really about. This is more of a, this is my land claim. I stake claim to what's under it. And that could be iron, that could be copper, that could be Quantanium, that could be whatever you want it to be. I do agree with Ray that there should be unique items that are only underground. There should be unique items that are maybe only in asteroid form. There should be unique items that are only in smaller forms that you wouldn't want to break with a prospector laser, but you might want to break with an ROC laser, right? So I think they've gone a pretty good route so far with things on this front, but yeah, I don't see anything wrong with extracting water from the ground or extracting iron, because naturally iron would be under the ground, right?
Too much into hard rock mining game loop to see it rendered obsolete or irrelevant. I would suggest that this mostly extracts liquid commodities and some gases contained in rocks. I don't say all gases because I'm still holding out hope for some sort of gas extraction on gas giant planets.
Same.
And then on the economic side, there are two words that Todd Pappy said in his presentation, or really sort of mumbled them, followed by a silence where the crowd wonder about what he just said.
And even ships.
Yeah, crafting ships.
Even ships. Now, some folks, let's call them the hypercrafters, hoped that what he was meaning to say was that even all ships, and they could someday build their own Javelin or 890 because in their hearts they want to be able to build everything, while others hoped, just as fervently, that he absolutely was not meaning that. Recently, there was quite a heated discussion on my Discord on exactly this subject. Arguing against the hypercrafters is two things. First,
I am the hypercrafter, by the way. I want to be very clear. I believe everything should be buildable by the players in the game. I think we need to take the absolute advantage of the pledge store and take it down a notch. Okay, I am of that ilk, and I believe that when a insurance claim is made, that needs to be filled by either a quantum player or an actual live player. Somebody needs to craft it. So then somebody, whether it's an NPC or a player, needs material. And then you go up the ladder from the ground materials, the lowest of the low, like iron and copper, all the way up to the highest of the high, which we probably haven't even heard of yet, right? I think we should be able to build build space stations, build ships, craft weapons, craft meds, craft armor, craft everything. I think we should have the option to do all of those things. The things that you're able to buy in-game, well, those should be very basic at the beginning. Maybe some of the things that you're able to craft, you're able to buy as well through reputation on a store. What is the point of extracting resources if you're crafting meaningless things?
First, it's ridiculous that in a world where whole planets are used by companies like Crusader Industries to build ships, that just anybody can do it for themselves on a homestead. I mean,
I'm more for the side of things that players can make 5% better than the pledge equivalents. For example, an extra capacitor and whatnot. I wouldn't want to. I think that's like actually too powerful in the direction of the in-game stuff. I love the idea, obviously, but I think that would come with a lot of pitchforks and stuff like that. I think you should be able to craft the components that you put inside the ships, and those crafted ones should be much better than what a stock ship would come with, or what you would be able to buy at Dumpers Depot or something with low reputation, you know?
Can, with a Freedom of Information Act request, get access to the warehouse full of plans for the Saturn V rocket. They are public domain. Does this mean that you could build one? No, even NASA no longer possesses the requisite manufacturing capability. That's why they started over designing the Artemis SLS to go back to the moon. But being able to craft all ships is also ridiculously risky. The entire funding model of Star Citizen is based on selling ships.
The funding model that is based on selling ships is supposed to end when the game is out. I think we all, Ray is about to get into it, except that it will not. We all know it will not. Assuming that it will not, we still need to make the game. We still need to make the game. So I don't know where he's going to go here, but I'm ready. I'm ready to throw down. Okay? I do not believe that we as backers and purchasers of the game need to worry about their funding model. That is their problem. And they should have been thinking about that a long time ago. And they didn't, because it was way easier to draw concept ships than it was to pivot and change and make things work for the future. And I'm not sure the way they're doing skins, the way they're doing unique armors and things like that is enough. So we're going to get stuck with selling ships. And if we're going to argue against crafting ships in the game because of the funding model of the game, we have failed. We have failed. We have failed as a community. We have failed as backers. And they have failed as developers. And that's the end of the story. If we can't argue for better gameplay for the player because of the funding model of the game has already failed us. Like, I just can't. At the moment I hear any backer argue for them financially, it blows my mind.
And their supply and demand curve. And you want to screw around with that by making it possible to make ships? Never underestimate the ability of players, when real money equivalents are on the line, to mass organize or simply contract with gold farming technoserfs. Is there, however, a middle ground between all ships and no ships? One that fits the idea of self-sufficient homesteading? Yes, of course there is. For inspiration, Google kit cars and kit ultralight aircraft. Yeah, they kind of make Drake look like a luxury brand. But that
he wants us to be crafting this. Is that what he's going to say? He wants me to craft this instead of a Hornet. He wants me to be... Oh, look at the crafters. Look at that. And there's a bird that flies by me faster than I'm fucking flying in the air. Waves, gives me the finger, and dive bombs away. You want me to be flying this fucking thing? You want me to craft this? Who's going to buy this?
It's the idea. They're just a tubular frame, perhaps with a small pressure vessel, or maybe just relying on your spacesuit, with slots that you can put the major components of engines.
Why would anyone use this in the Star Citizen game? This looks fun as fuck in real life, just to be very clear. But using real life examples in a video game doesn't always work. And I want to be very, very clear here, is the idea of building ships doesn't have to be specifically for your own use. This is like, if we look at Eve as an example, and I know Eve isn't the best example all the time, but there will be buy orders for certain things. Some of those things might be ships. The buy orders, like, I believe that the moment you make a claim on your ship in the game, the global marketplace should place a buy order for your ship. That's your ship, maybe with the components on it, maybe not, I don't know, right? And that's the buy order, and that's the ship that you need to make. Or you can have large orgs who want to do buy orders for certain ships as well. And then it's either players or quantum AI that are deciding whether or not they're going to make that. Is it worth it? Is the buy order good enough for me? Or the sell price good enough for me, or whatever, right? And if you don't do it, then a quantum AI will eventually do it to fill that insurance claim. The insurance company is the one that's going to pay for the ship and deliver it to you. That's my thought process there. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad, but I don't think that players should be removed from the ability to make the ships in the game and play the game. Because now you're creating artificial, like, blocks for no reason. Quantum is the background simulation of the economy. So essentially, how they describe it is, for every one of us actual players, there'll be 9 NPCs just doing things in the background, keeping the game world alive. So, for example, let's say there's a system that's kind of dead that players don't want to play in, but it would be kind of crazy if NPCs weren't there. Like, it wouldn't make sense if NPCs weren't living there and doing stuff. They would be doing it in the background simulation. So you would come there and it would appear as if there was settlements and things and stuff happening. But actual players in the game might not be doing it.
Shield generator, cooler, quantum drive, thrusters, life support, avionics, weapons, etc. that you can salvage from other craft or buy from Platinum Bay or wherever. It fits the milieu of self-sufficiently, doesn't risk the value equations of CIG's funding model, is fun and funky, doesn't cause any fretting over the unsurprising fact.
The list of craftable ships should be heavily limited, though, only because a large portion of Star Citizen ships are military ships. F7C, civilian. F8C, civilian. Need I say more?
Uninsured and uninsurable. And best of all, there's no need to try and fail to block it behind some massive resource grind. Easy made, easy flown, easy crashed is the motto of the Home-Built Spaceship Society. That is how I think they should fulfill Todd Pappy's two-word promise. It does qualify. Now, let's segue to the subject dear to my heart, the design tools, as I was an early adopter and advocate of computer design software for architects and facility managers, even writing some. And better tools make better designs. And I was very heartened when Todd Pappy talked about having a separate surveyor tool to design the layout.
No reason why buying a license from Aegis shouldn't let you make them. I don't think you should be allowed to buy a license. Well, eventually you should be allowed to buy a license from Aegis, but you should earn the ability to buy the license from Aegis. So I'll use a real world example that's different than Ray. I'm going to use Coca-Cola, my favorite sugary drink. Every Coca-Cola product is crafted and bottled locally. There are regional bottling locations that are owned by individuals. As far as I understand, it's sort of like franchising, or franchising a McDonald's, franchising a Subway, right? You're crafting the sandwich, but it's a Subway sandwich, right? You could be a franchise that crafts Origin ships, right? That's where I want things to be, right? That's just my thought process, is I want to be a franchisee, but you need to earn the ability to be a franchisee. You don't just get to do it on day one.
Because never mind the movies, architects do not design buildings by walking around on the construction site. They create a plan, and others reference the plan when building. Real-world design is iterative. You create and discard many preliminary layouts, literally layer by layer, with increasing levels of refinement. Real-world design is collaborative, with lots of back and forth between the designer, owner, and users. Remember, many of these bases...
But bro, this is a video game. This is you're gonna place down an object and go, yeah, fuck that. That object isn't gonna work. And this little laser guy is gonna make it disappear. And then you're gonna go, all right, I'm gonna put it over there. And this little laser guy is gonna put it back.
...are going to be used by a whole org. And real-world design is done by talented people. This isn't a single...
Guess what Star Citizen design is going to be made by? Not talented people.
...player game. This is a game played by groups of friends,
but mostly
likely
not.
in an organization, and possibly designing a whole cluster of adjacent land claim homesteads from individuals with codependent circulation and protection goals. And every group of players is going to have that guy. I don't mean that gender specific.
He's right. The guy who's going to do all the base building.
That maybe is an architect or engineer themselves, or who just loves to play city builder games, or maybe both. And a smart organization is going to want to have that...
Ray sounds like that
guy to design all their adjacent homesteads with the goal of creating a coherent, safe, and efficient community.
The only problem is if Ray is that guy in low sec or null sec, those other guys are going to come around and ruin all the work that Ray, that guy, did.
To have a clue about how to approach that sort of thing or not. But that guy is going to need a whole different set of design tools than a single-player game would. So when you complete a land claim, you can create an external file of the terrain, resources, and existing improvements. You then transmit this file to that guy in your org. That guy can then bring it up and its adjacent files into the design tool and begin creating various preliminary layouts, each stamped not for construction. That guy can also note that the intended order of construction. They can then send those preliminary layouts back and forth with the landowner for feedback, and when everyone's happy, that guy can send...
Someone in chat, fuck that guy. So, yeah, I'm sort of with the idea of like, all right, Ray, I know you want to take it to this level, but I always would love, and Ray's just sharing what he would love things to be. And that's fine. We have to respect that. Everybody that is a Star Citizen fan has done what Ray is doing right now. So please show some respect and realize this is something he's passionate about. I've definitely done it with mining. I've definitely done it with salvage. Definitely done it with other things in this game. Okay? So with that said, as a creator, what I personally like to do or try to avoid is going super hard on what I want and try to remember that what I want is not what everybody wants. And what I want may not be best for the game overall. What we should be trying to achieve is a very simple system. A very simple system that does give a little bit of room to figure out a way to make it look really good or figure out a way to make it really efficient. And that guy can be that guy. But if you're going to provide a system where we're sending plans back and forth for approval, we've gone too far, guy. You know? We're not that guy anymore. We're that ridiculous guy.
And the copy stamped final. But then the player can load the approved final layout into his builder ship, and it will guide them as to where to place things. Yeah, very much like real life. And it needs to be, because the real life process works. Since this is running long, I'll just say that for this video, the secret word is the motto of the Home Built Spaceship Society. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Daniel Raymond for Ray's Guide.
All right. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, I just think we got to think about the overall game. That's the most important thing, and not just what we want. I'm down for Ray's idea at the end, by the way. I think it's a little overcomplicated for me, but if people are willing and able to do that stuff, why wouldn't you allow them to go really deep? And I just think because if you put in too many systems that are confusing and hard to understand for players, then they're not going to engage with the system at all. So simple, but easy to understand, difficult to master is what you should be trying to go for with everything, right? Here's my take. Make it fun, not frustrating. It's a video game. Exactly. So he gave the example of real life works. Real life's also really frustrating and not fun all the time. Video games need to be fun. I love to play city builder games. Guess what? When I screw up, I get my little bulldozer out and I pull and drag and everything's gone. I get my little tool and I landscape the world and make the ground flat. And guess what? It didn't take months, if not years, to terraform the land. That's real life. That does not work in a video game. So we do need to keep things simple and then allow for some mastering in there. That's how I feel, but I totally get where Ray's coming from because this is something he's passionate about and he wants this to be as deep as it can possibly get because this is probably where he wants to spend most of his time in the game. So I get it. I want mining to be more complicated. I want mining to be more in depth and You know, I want to be crafting all sorts of cool stuff, and but I also know that I hear the complaints already about people with mining, and I wonder, does it need to be simpler? Has it gone too far? I don't feel it, but a lot of players don't understand what's going on anymore. So keep it simple, stupid is my perspective. I do hope those slides are as black and white as they were, and I hope we get an experimental mode of base building, base defense, base attacking, and just a thought process of where they want this stuff to go. I hope we get that. Maybe this year, maybe next year, but I hope what we get is an experimental mode highlighting that and allowing us to go full on crazy and then decide where the boundaries lie between each of the three types of land claims. And then we'll see. But very great video. I'm really enjoying this series from Reg because he's super passionate about it, and so am I. And let me link you guys Ray's channel if I have not yet. And yeah, enjoy because Ray's awesome.